Welcome into the Offsides podcast with Ethan Petrik. I'm your host, Ethan Petrik. Starting off the show today, I want to give a quick shout out to Mike Doc Emrick, the preeminent voice for NHL games on NBC and NBC Sports for the last 15 years, is retiring after a very long and illustrious career calling NHL games. It's estimated that he called over 3,750 games during his career, calling 22 Stanley Cup final games, receiving 8 Sports Emmy Awards for play-by-play. He was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2008. He'll continue to work for NBC, narrating and writing video essays about just the NHL. But congratulations on the retirement, and I'll be interested to see who NBC uses to replace one of the trademark, just traditional voices of the NHL. You listen to Doc Emrick and it just says NHL to you, so it'll be interesting to see how they go about replacing his voice and just his presence on that broadcast. However, shifting over to what we're going to be talking about for the entire show today and the next couple shows is I'm going to be going ahead and classifying every NHL team on how I see them in this upcoming season. I'm not going to tell you, these aren't power rankings. I'm not telling you what I'm expecting out of this next season per se. I'm not going to say this team's going to make the playoffs, this team isn't. I'm just going to tell you where this team is at as a franchise heading into the 2021 NHL season. I'm going to do that by giving them different classifications. I'm going to start off with the Atlantic Division, but I'll give you a quick rundown of the classifications to start off. Number 1, we have serious contenders. A serious contender is a team whose floor is really just making the Stanley Cup final. This team would be disappointed with anything less. Even the conference championship, losing in the conference finals, is not good enough for this team. Our second level is playoff lock. This is a team that will make the playoffs, no doubt. They'll be a top 5 seed. Their eligibility for the playoffs will never really be in question throughout the year. They have a chance to make some noise in the playoffs. They will make it to the finals, but they're not really a serious contender and most likely will not end up in the Stanley Cup final. They do have potential to upset a serious contender, but I don't anticipate seeing that. It'll take some serious moves, a couple lucky breaks, possibly an injury. Our third category is a fringe playoff team. A team in this category is a team that might make the playoffs but might not. They need to make some moves, maybe hope for some injuries. They really need a key acquisition or a player to go off. Also in this category are teams that are unproven, young teams who haven't made the playoffs yet, or maybe did make the playoffs but got a couple lucky breaks last year, and we're still looking to see them confirm that they are, in fact, one of those top-tier teams in the NHL. A lot of potential in the fringe playoff category to move to be a playoff lock or fall down to our next category, which is draft purgatory. Draft purgatory teams, they're not going to make the playoffs, but they're not going to be bad enough to have a real shot at winning the draft lottery. We have seen some crazy stuff happen the last 2 years in the draft lottery, a couple teams moving up the rankings, but really we're looking at teams in that like 9 to about 14 range where they're not going to get an all-world player. It's going to be a player who might not even end up working out in the NHL, might not be a all-star caliber player, might just end up being a bottom 6 guy. That's the teams we're going to be seeing in draft purgatory. If you're a team, draft purgatory is one of the worst places to be because there's no real simple way out. You have to make significant moves, maybe a big free agent acquisition. A couple teams like this have been, an example of this would be in the Buffalo Sabres over the last couple of years. They've been in draft purgatory, but they have been drafting at the top end of the draft. They just haven't been hitting on their picks, so they've just been drafting and drafting and drafting. None of their players are working out to the point where they are an all-world team. They're not even making the playoffs. They're struggling to make the playoffs. So that's a team that's in draft purgatory. Our next category is bright future. A bright future team probably isn't going to make the playoffs, might end up really close to the top of the draft, but they have a really deep prospect pool, and it's really intriguing. They might not be the best team in the NHL, but in the AHL and some of the team players that they have the rights to in juniors, they're going to be exciting players. And these teams know they're not going to win the Stanley Cup. No, they're probably not going to make the playoffs, but they are very excited about where they are at. Our last category is rebuild time. A team that's got it's time for a rebuild. It's pretty hopeless, soul crushing. The light is not visible at the end of the tunnel. You really don't know when it's going to end, and despair is set in. These are usually teams that have just lost a lot of veterans who were their strong core. They probably were a playoff team recently, and now their talent has eroded, and they don't really have the farm system to rebuild, restock the NHL roster. So it's certainly easy for teams to completely skip this step if they draft well, but there are definitely some teams who have drafted extremely poorly over the last couple of years and kind of have just a vacuum of talent on their roster, and they got old. You'll understand when I mention the team that I feel out of the Atlantic Division is rebuild time. So without further ado, let's get right into it. For starters, we're just going to go from the top of the standings this last year in the Atlantic to the bottom. So our first team is the Bruins, the Boston Bruins. This is a team I have pegged as a serious contender. The window is closing for the Bruins. They're getting a little older. Tuukka Rask, how much longer is he going to be in Boston? We don't know. But I feel this next season, the Boston Bruins are still a very serious contender for the Stanley Cup playoffs. It was obviously disappointing for that franchise to not make the Stanley Cup finals this year, and I think it's just going to be a repeat of this next season. Losing Torrey Krug to the St. Louis Blues was certainly a big loss. I cannot overstate how big of a loss that Torrey Krug was. He was fourth on the team in scoring with 49 points, and he just offered a veteran presence. He's been on that blue line for the last couple of years, and certainly a player that if I was a GM, I would not want to lose. That being said, they do have Matt Grzelcyk, who they're hoping can make a step up offensively, continue to develop as a player, and fill in for what Torrey Krug took with him by going to the Blues. So I'll keep my eye on Matt Grzelcyk, see if he can continue his development. I'm not sure if he will, but I still like the Boston Bruins as a serious contender. One move I would make if I was the GM of the Bruins is I'd sign Zdeno Chara to a team-friendly deal. I'd be looking for about a 1-year contract just to keep that veteran presence on the blue line. You already lost Torrey Krug. You don't want to lose Zdeno Chara, who's really been a leader on your team over the last decade. So if I'm the Boston Bruins GM, I'm looking to bring back Zdeno Chara just for the veteran presence and the consistency on the blue line. You don't want to lose too much from that unit. There's only 6 players in it per team. Losing 2 would be a pretty big loss, and I would certainly reconsider serious contenders if Zdeno Chara is not brought back. Our second place team in the Atlantic Division was the Tampa Bay Lightning last year. The reigning Stanley Cup champions for this next season are serious contenders. Surprise, surprise, I know. They just won the Stanley Cup. Of course they're serious contenders. It would be obviously a giant disappointment to not even make the Stanley Cup finals next year, given that they are the reigning Cup champions. But I feel like the Lightning are in a better position than the Boston Bruins. This could be a dynasty in the making. They have a good blend of youth and veterans. They had 11 players score over 30 points last season. They still have Andrei Vasilevsky in net. One move that they still need to make is they need to find a replacement for Tyler Johnson's production. Certainly, his production was falling, but he still put up 31 points last year, and that's pretty difficult to replace. They also lost Kevin Shattenkirk. He went and signed with the Vegas Golden Knights. I don't feel that they've lost enough talent this offseason to warrant dropping them from serious contenders. But they need to find replacement for at least some of the talent that they lost. Tyler Johnson and Kevin Shattenkirk combined were both pretty crucial points, key pieces of that team at points this season. So if I'm the Tampa Bay Lightning, I'm looking to make a splash signing, maybe a depth guy. I wouldn't say a splash signing per se, I guess, but just a guy who can come in and work and fit in the cap structure of that team. Number 3 from the Atlantic this last season was the Maple Leafs. The Toronto Maple Leafs have been a real quagmire in the NHL, but I still have them as a playoff lock because they have one of the best 1-2 punches at center in the NHL. but they need more from Jonathan Tavares and William Nylander. I'm a really big Tavares fan. I was number 91 when I played hockey for Tavares. He's one of my favorite players, but he has not been good since he signed that deal with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He only put up 60. He was into 60 points last season, and signing the contract that he did, you would want more production out of him. Also with William Nylander, guy who held out for a larger contract and has underperformed since signing that contract, also only putting up around 60 points this last season. Those two guys are very crucial for the Toronto Maple Leafs if they want to move up to serious contender status, but also very crucial for the Maple Leafs is defense. This is a team that has been very weak on the defense. They have just lacked stars. They went out this offseason and signed TJ Brody. I don't know if he's that big of an upgrade over Tyson Barrie, who they let walk. I don't know if it's enough to move the needle. If he plays the way that they expect him to, given the contract that they signed him to, they will be a serious contender. But I don't anticipate that he will be that star on the blue line that they need, and that's why I only have them as a playoff lock. I do anticipate that they will make it past the first round this year, possibly make an Eastern Conference Finals appearance, but I do not feel that they have the talent on the defense to make a serious attempt at the title. Next up, number 4 in the Atlantic this last year was the Florida Panthers. This is a team I see taking a rather large step back. I have them slated in the draft purgatory category. So they're gonna be more successful than a good chunk of teams. They're not gonna be in the bottom 5, but they're not gonna be a playoff team. You have to like Alexander Barkov and Jonathan Huberdeau, but there's not much else to like in Florida. Sergei Bobrovsky was a serious disappointment in net. He only had a 90.1 save percentage. And the defensive unit in Florida is weak beyond Keith Yandel and Aaron Ekblad. Both of them are solid players. You can't ask them to do much more. They both put up over 40 points last year. Plus minuses were decent. But they lose Mike Hoffman, who is number 3 on the team in scoring. And you ask where is the production going to be at for the Florida Panthers? They don't have it in net. They have it on the blue line for their top 2, but beyond that, they don't have much spoken for production. And because of that, I just can't see them being a playoff team again this year. And it's one of the main reasons why I have them falling back into the draft purgatory category. One thing I would tell the Florida Panthers to do is give Chris Driedger more time in net to see what he is. He's been a goalie who hasn't really gotten a real shot at the NHL. He's 26 years old. He had a 93.8 save percentage last year. It was better than Sergei Bobrovsky. He played 12 games. And I would love to see how he would do in a more platoon-esque role, swapping out with Bobrovsky and getting an equal split in net. This is a guy who hasn't had a real shot at the NHL. He only played 2 games for the Ottawa Senators, who drafted him originally. Got a shutout in both games, and has continued to have a very good save percentage in the NHL, but no team has given him a real shot to play a lot of minutes, so I'd look to give him more minutes in net. The number 5th ranked team in the Atlantic Division from last season was the Montreal Canadiens. I have them as a fringe playoff team. They have young stars who are emerging, but their depth is not really there for a playoff team. Nick Suzuki looks poised to become a real star in Montreal, but you need more than just one guy. The Edmonton Oilers continue to prove that. They have 2 MVP candidates, and they can't make it happen. So one guy who's probably not on the level of Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid isn't going to do it for Montreal. The Josh Anderson contract is quite the albatross. He didn't really have the production last year to warrant a contract of that magnitude. It's going to limit what they can do, what the moves they can make. I think they would have been better off not even making the trade. I think Max Domi is a significantly better player. But this is the world we live in for the Canadiens, so I have them as a fringe playoff team. I don't think that they have lost enough pieces to fall back into draft purgatory like the Panthers, but I certainly don't have them as high as the next team down in the standings. One move I would suggest the Canadiens make is re-sign Phillip Danault. Phillip Danault is an exceptional center. He's good in both ends of the ice. They need to lock him up. I understand that they might not be able to, but that is a move that I would make a top priority if I was the Canadiens, and it sounds like they have. We'll see if they can end up making that. Number 6 in the standings from the Atlantic Division last year was the Buffalo Sabres. I have them also as a fringe playoff team. You're going to have a lot of fringe playoff teams because there are plenty of teams who can make it every year. More teams make it than don't. I have the Buffalo Sabres as a fringe playoff team, and I'd be more confident saying that they would make it than I would the Montreal Canadiens. Here's why. They have more youthful depth. They added Taylor Hall, who's going to add an offensive scoring punch that they haven't really had over the last couple of years. And I like their young defenseman to take a step up. Casey Milstead has not been the elite defender that the Buffalo Sabres drafted him to be, but that doesn't mean the book is written on him yet. There's still plenty of time for him to prove to be a reliable guy in that decor in Buffalo. And you also have a new GM who's looking to make a splash. This team has not been successful in making the playoffs over the last couple of years. Jack Eichel is frustrated, but I like them a lot more than I like the Montreal Canadiens. One move I would make if I was the Buffalo Sabres GM is I'd go after a veteran goalie to platoon with Linus Ullmark. Corey Schneider and Craig Anderson are available. Both guys kind of had down years last year, but they have been very productive in the past. So maybe limited time will be better for those guys. Start Linus Ullmark in 2/3 of your games. Corey Schneider, Craig Anderson, 1/3 of your games. I think that could be enough to make the playoffs. We'll see what they do, but that's what I would do if I was the Buffalo Sabres GM. Number 7 in the standings from last year was the Ottawa Senators. The Ottawa Senators I had pegged as a bright future team. You see constant calls for the firing of the GM in Ottawa, but I think he's doing actually a really good job rebuilding this roster. They have a number of young stars in the making. The one thing that they can't do is rush Tim Stützle. Don't be over aggressive. It was announced recently that he's going to have surgery for a broken arm that he suffered while training with his team in Germany. But even beyond that, I would say don't rush it because he still has to adjust to life in North America, the North American game. Take it slow with your young star, and you might have one of the next great scoring threats on your team. Another thing I would tell the Ottawa Senators not to do is don't be overly aggressive if you get a taste of success. Oftentimes you'll see teams who have lacked playoff success recently, and they get a little sniff of a win. Maybe they're a couple games above 500. They're right there in the hunt early in the season, and they make a flurry of moves for established players, but not exactly established stars. They sell the farm system for a chance at success now. And it's a case of instant gratification versus delayed gratification. And I would tell the Senators that you are much better off waiting and letting your players develop than to sell them now for what's good now. Because you do not have the roster. You don't have the goalie. You don't have the defense. You just don't have the depth to make a serious run at the title. So you shouldn't make the moves like you have a chance at a serious run at the title. So take it slow. Just weather the storm, and you'll be a good team in 2 to 3 years. The bottom team from the Atlantic standings last year was the Detroit Red Wings. This is a rating that could have been very different had the draft lottery gone a lot different. But I have the Detroit Red Wings in rebuild time. I don't think a lot of people would dispute me on that. But this is a team who had a lot of success. They had a lot of really exceptional players for a long time. Those players are gone now. The cupboard is bare in Detroit. You have Dylan Larkin. Anthony Mantha is all right. Neither of them can do it on their own, and neither of them are doing it on their own. Detroit needs some serious luck to even sniff a playoff berth this next year. And one thing I would tell them to do is just sell any movable asset you have. Get draft picks, prospects, whatever you can to continue to rebuild that prospect pool that is exceptionally weak in Detroit. Get rid of everything except for Dylan Larkin unless you're getting an exceptional deal for Dylan Larkin. It's not going to be now. It's not going to be in the next 3 years. Just be patient, take it slow, draft well, and pray for luck in the lottery because you definitely didn't have it last time. That's all the time we have for today. Make sure to catch me tomorrow on Takeout Tuesday at 2. This Friday on Friday or Thursday. Safe Saturdays to you as always. The OG Safe Saturdays podcast this Saturday at 10. And be sure to catch me next week as I take on the Metropolitan Division and tell you what I think of those teams heading into the 2020-2021 NHL season. But as always, Safe Saturdays.